Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Hi there. Welcome to our talk. Today, the topic is up in the air and defensive driving, doing a mashup because I missed 2 weeks basically. I missed not this week, but the week before. So I was in New York City the week before last, and I was packing up my childhood home. And I think if you've been following along, then you know my mom passed away at the end of 2021. And my stepdad and my brother have been living in the apartment I grew up in, since then. And they decided they were ready to have a new adventure. And so I was actually there in the middle of February, and my brother and I, my mom and my dad moved into this apartment when I was 2. So, it's a really, significant amount of time that we were in that apartment. And my mom was there for, 50 years basically. And so it's a not easy thing to pack up a place that you've lived in for a long time. And even though I have been living in California for the last 25 years, I still have a bunch of things there from my childhood. And so when I went back in February, and my brother and I went through pretty much all the closets in the house. And when I left, I said, okay, I'll be back in a month. And so just make sure you pack a little bit every day, because when I come back, we're only going to have like 3 days before we have to get in the U-Haul and drive to South Carolina, which is where they have moved. And my brother wanted to drive. And we have never really, my brother and I, taken a long road trip like that together. So I was game for that. When I arrived in New York City, it became very apparent very quickly that his idea and my idea of being ready to go in 3 days were extremely different. And so it was just absolute madness. We were up until 4 o'clock in the morning every night in order to be ready to go Monday morning. And we picked up the U-Haul on Sunday morning, and we're basically loading it all day Sunday and all through the night. We had been worrying about where are we going to park it overnight, and that just wasn't even a factor because we needed it right where it was to continue packing. And I mean, I'm still sort of like processing all the different things that happened, but as you do when you're going through things like that, and I had already done I packed my mother's things hours after she passed away. My stepdad really needed at least the bedroom to be not so full of all of her things. I think it was really painful for him. And so, and everybody responds to grief differently. And I think he just needed a little bit of space where there weren't constant reminders every time he opened a drawer, opened a closet. And I, really understood. So, I mean, it was not even, she passed away at 3:37 in the morning. And at 8:30, I was already like going through her jewelry and her closet and her dresser. I mean, it was really intense. So I'd already done a lot of a lot of that. But there was the entire kitchen. There were just so many things. And I found letters. I found letters that my dad had written my mom. I found I found a letter that my dad had written to my grandmother, my mother's mother. And when my parents met, my dad was married and he had two teenagers. And it was not obviously, an ideal situation to say the least. And my grandmother was very concerned. And there were other factors that I won't go into that, were also really distressing to her. And my dad sent her a letter that I, never knew existed until last week. And basically really was pleading his case and just saying, I understand. He named everything. He said, I understand why this must be incredibly painful for you. And my mom was 20 years younger than my dad. And so he really acknowledged everything. He said, I completely understand how this must be and how this must feel to, have your daughter be falling in love with someone who, is leaving his family. And you must not be having very positive thoughts about me to be leaving my wife and my children, he said it all. And it was really interesting for me because that's not the man that I really knew growing up. And the last year of my dad's life, I moved him out here to California so that I could take care of him. He was 95 and I moved him to an assisted living facility near me. And I went out there 3-4 times a week, really whatever he needed, and took him to his doctor's appointments and took him to Dunkin' Donuts and made sure he had his Mott's apple juice and his sculpting clay. And, I spent some time thinking about what do I owe him, and I realized it's not about that for me. It's not about that. It's really more about who do I want to be. And so, he was not a great dad, unfortunately, but he was the dad that I got. And I feel like everyone, and this is just my opinion, but I feel like everyone, deserves to leave this earth and feel cared for. It would not have been okay for me, for him to have been on his own somewhere else. So it was more about that for me. Like, who do I want to be in this situation? And and I know for people who have complicated relationships with parents, it's a thing that you just have to kind of grapple with and figure out what makes sense for you. And what made sense for me is not necessarily how it is for everyone, For many years, I really wasn't so angry with my dad. I was when I was younger. I had a lot of years where there were some years where I didn't speak to him. There were many years where I only saw him a couple times a year because he lived in North Carolina. I lived in California, and that's how it was. So, it was not difficult to manage the relationship or whatever disappointment I might have felt along the way. I think at a certain point, I just recognized this is who he is. I did try to talk to him. I think when I was my 20s, I tried to really get it, like the things that had happened, but he was not able to do that. He would often say things like, I don't even remember, it feels like a different lifetime, that kind of thing. So there was no real accountability that was going to happen or, deep conversations or, and any kind of real apology, which is why it was interesting for me to find a letter like that, because he was very accountable at that time. And what ended up happening is really, I think, as I watched my mother going, and there are things that I have found since too. I came to understand, and I have come to understand, and I always suspected that the problem between my mother and me was my dad. I think that he really broke her heart. And I think that unfortunately, consciously or subconsciously, I was symbolic of that for her. And when she drank, that is what rose to the surface. And so it just was really painful. It caused a real, there's like a real fault line there in our relationship that caused a lot of pain and heartache. And at the end of my mother's life, she and I thankfully got a lot of healing done in a short amount of time, a few weeks at the very end of her life. When she could not speak anymore, that is when we really started talking to each other. But I think what happened for me is I had sort of a resurgence of rage and fury because I lost so much time with her and because he hurt her so much. I think I really felt this, like newfound rage kind of rise to the surface. And instead of like saying to myself, oh, that isn't, you know, I don't want to feel that, or like, I don't, I want to let that go. Or, it's like, I just let myself feel it. I was grieving my mother, and grieving the loss of her and grieving the loss of like the time that we didn't get to have, and letting myself feel those feelings, and that's okay. And I think a lot of the time, we try to push that stuff down or rush to forgive. And, I really didn't want to do that to myself. But it was complicated because I had him, I was also taking care of him. And I could separate, this thing that had happened in the past with this old man in front of me, and that it's like, they're not really the same person anymore. It's the person I'm going to take care of here in front of me who can't hear and is like needing help. And then there's this man who kind of, wrought a lot of, just pain and destruction on a lot of people, unfortunately, his children and every woman he ever knew. And, and every woman he was romantically involved with anyway. I think he was a good friend to people, and I think he was a good uncle and an interesting person and very creative and open-minded and a fun person probably to sit next to at a party, So he had his good qualities too. But when I was reading that letter, the other thing that happened, aside from being like, wow, he's being so honest about his own, just his own flaws, as a person. And the fact that he just, even though this is so like selfish and he's going to hurt all these people, he just can't not be with my mom. Right. I was like, wow, I think it felt to me like reading this, like, wow, he really did love her. And, I was convinced, and I'm sure my grandmother was convinced. And, my mother's family did really eventually like embrace my dad and love him. And I know that. And then I got really pissed again because I was like, God, like, really? So you leave your wife and you leave your teenagers, you like hurt them deeply and convince my grandmother and my mother and her whole family that this is going to be, that you have to be with her. And then as soon as she gets pregnant, you have to go and like start cheating on her. Like, you couldn't not do that. It was just like, what was the point of all that? If that's what you were going to turn around, do the same thing to her that you had done to everyone else. And And I don't think ever really recovered. So, and that ended up having like, the tremors of that are still with me, So, so all of that. And then there were other things. I mean, I found all the really good photo albums from my childhood were in the basement. They weren't like in the cabinets in the living room with all the other photo albums. So that was kind of painful. And I found a letter that I had written to my mom when I was 9, like after a terrible night and of her drinking. And, she would, it was painful when she drank. And I would write these apology letters in the morning, and I like broke my heart, because I think I had kind of blocked that out. Or, maybe forgotten the letters because the other stuff stood out more. But as soon as I opened it, I was like, oh God, yeah. And I don't know why she saved any of them. I really don't, because it was so, it just was really heartbreaking. It was just a lot of like, I'm so sorry that I left you a mess, and I am terrible and lazy, and you deserve a better child, and I'll do better, and I love you. And I'm, like, it was just awful. It was like a really painful letter. And, because for a long time when I was a kid, I didn't realize that the drinking was unleashing a lot of this behavior. I just thought like it was me and that I deserved it. And then the fact that in the morning, she would expect me to act like everything was okay and to apologize, kind of really sealed in the gaslighting, like, this was your fault. You did bring this on yourself. Like, and that didn't change until I was like 13, 14, and I started to understand this is not me. And this is not normal. Like, this is not what's happening in my friends' households. And so it was a lot, it was a real unearthing of all of that stuff that you might not ever find otherwise, really. And then I found some other things too that I like had completely forgotten about. I used to play with this doll that she had when she was a kid, and the doll came with this incredible wardrobe, and the wardrobe was in like a metal box, like really well made, and the clothing was really well made. And this doll had like shoes and bloomers and like hats for every dress, and like little bags and groceries. And I mean, it was just like, and a cafe, like wooden and metal, like table and chairs with like a beach umbrella that actually opened. And I mean, a tea set made of china, like really stuff that you just would never find anymore. And as soon as I saw the metal box, and I didn't at first remember, like, I just recognized the box, but I couldn't have told you what was in it right away. It just had like flood of like familiarity washed over me, and I like went right for it. And as soon as I opened it, it was just like hours of my childhood. And the doll was named Ginny. She was in this Capezio box. Ballet slippers come in them, right? And I opened that, and there she was. And I mean, of course, I shipped boxes to myself out here, so I've just been like been opening boxes for weeks now. So all of that. My brother and I drove a U-Haul into a tornado to get to South Carolina. We made it. And then we thought like, okay, we're through the worst of it. Like, we packed up the apartment, we got it done, we left on time, we packed the U-Haul, we drove, we got there, and then we realized like, oh no, we're not done. Like, we have to now unpack everything that we packed and somehow like, organize a new house. So I was there then for a few days on the other end, organizing that whole situation. So I was writing about all of that, but more about the letter that, with my dad to my grandmother, and forgiveness, this idea about forgiveness, and this, just this whole, I think also because we are so immersed in this conversation about what's happening in this world, and of course the Epstein files, and the way that just nothing is happening there. Like, there is no justice. There is no satisfactory. It's like these things have come to light and then nothing happens, right? And I was thinking about the Pellico case, right? That, Giselle Pellico, and now there are all these cases that are happening, where women are coming forward, and the same thing has happened to them, where their husbands have drugged them, and it's the same story. You just get to this point where, I was writing about, and I was writing about that this week. So that was up in the air. And then this week I was writing, the essay this week is called Defensive Driving. And at a certain point in the essay this week, I was talking about how I had written recently another essay called You Should Smile More, which was one of the most read essays, of the last year that I've written. And in that essay, I was talking about what it's like to grow up as a girl and then a woman in this world, and my experiences, like things that happened to me along the way that were really not, they're not fun or easy to write about, and they're not fun or easy to talk about. And you can go and find, I linked it in this week's essay. If you want to go and find it, you can. And I got incredible, there are amazing comments from a lot of women who sadly relate. Every time I write about assault, sadly, it's this huge group of people, huge group of women and some men, and that is really important for everyone to know. And I think people do that, when we're talking about this stuff, it's children, it's women and children. It does skew heavily toward women and girls, but it is children. And there were amazing comments, and so many women who sadly relate and had experiences as girls. And, I wasn't just writing about these things that happen on the street or happen at the park or happen on a public bus or a subway. I was also writing about, like, the husbands of my mother's friends, teachers, and, things that with people you should have been able to trust. And in the comments, there were, again, some lovely comments, but some man shows up in the comments and he is like, next time, why don't you write about, some good men instead of all the deviants that you wrote about in this essay. And, I was saying, this is not an atypical thing that will happen. It's like, you as a woman, me as a woman, like, I will write about something that I'm speaking to my own life experience, my own lived experience as a girl and a woman, and now the mother of a daughter who is 16, and as some man will come along in the comments and say something like that. It's not deviant. That's the sad fact. And I think that is what, every woman is trying to yell from the rooftops right now. Can we not understand this yet? If it's this many women saying, me too, me too, me too, it's not deviant. It's average. It's typical. It's common. It's everywhere and all the time. And the deviance is the men who don't behave that way, the men who are not like that, who do like women and respect women. Now, I'm not saying, whatever, I don't think that the 99% of men are violent or predators. I'm saying, men who are harassing women, demeaning women, speaking down toward women, and then men who are harassing women, sexually harassing women at work, saying things that are inappropriate, and then men who are assaulting women or exposing themselves or physically touching them or, fully assaulting them. So that's what I'm saying. It's like, that's everywhere all the time. And then there are men who don't do that, who lift themselves up out of that, and those men are few and far between because we're all in this water together. We're in this patriarchal water together. It makes all of us sick. And thankfully, there are men who say to themselves, that's not cool. That doesn't make sense to me that, girls or women are not going to be treated as equal, full-bodied human beings with just as much to offer as I have to offer. I reject that. I reject that philosophy. I don't agree with that. I don't partake in that poisonous thinking. It takes a lot to pull yourself out of that for men and women. It's harming all of us, So, and there are women who are, who hate women. It's like if you are constantly fed this messaging that women are less than, or your job is to be, really to diminish yourself, to be small, to be nurturing, to be kind, to be helpful, and you're supposed to take care of everything and make everything okay for everyone all the time. And, like the man is the one who's going to go out there and do the conquering and do the hunting and gathering, or what. It's like, if you're constantly, and then you're watching in school, guys are, they can be boisterous, they can take up space, they can, walk into a room and they're not, it's like, or you're in first grade or you're in second grade and you're being seated next to your friend, whatever, Joe, who can't concentrate, and you're being asked to help him focus. It's insidious, and it's early, and it's constant, and so we're all breathing this in all the time, and it isn't good for anyone. It isn't good for the boys or the men either. It isn't good for a boy to feel like he's not allowed to cry, or he's not allowed to ask for help, or he's not allowed, none of this is good for any of us. So that, I was out with, I was writing about also this week in Defensive Driving. I was writing about, I have this desk back here in the studio, and it's my big writing desk. And when I was writing the last book, I set this up back here because my kids were, in the house and in the middle school years, and they would have tons of friends over and be really loud. And sometimes I would sneak back here and try to, bang out a few pages. And lately I have been writing in the front of the house, in the den, the sun streaming in, and, it's the dog curls up by my feet and there's hummingbirds outside. And it's just, I love it. I'm there on the couch and just writing away. And I've been liking that. And I may end up moving back here. I move around, but that's where I've been a lot lately. And I was talking about, my daughter is in the house now. My son is in his second year of college. So it's just different. My daughter's 16 and she's out the door all the time now, and she's driving, and I just had to put her on my insurance policy. And so now both kids are on my on my driving insurance policy, and it is like, it's like taking out a mortgage. It's so crazy to insure new drivers in case you haven't done that. And so I was looking up like if there's any way to make it better. And one of the things that I found is that if your kids take a defensive driving course, then annually it's like 15% less each to cover them. So it's like, oh, great. Maybe, that would be good. And so I was like texting with my son because I don't want to put too much on his plate because he's already like a sophomore in college and he's working and but he was like, no, of course they will, Mom. Like, just no problem. So I was thinking like it would be maybe fun. And I said that to him. I was like, maybe it'll be fun. I was thinking like, oh, it's like an in-person course that you take, and maybe like it's like when you learned how to drive and you had the double, the two drive, like the two, you had the instructor in the car there with you, and maybe you'd go out on the freeways and they would like tell you, whatever. And I was of course joking in the essay, and I was saying like, that I thought it was like, if it was like, if somebody was tailgating you, or if like a truck started veering into your lane, or if you were 2 car lengths behind a pickup truck and like a pole came loose and started flying at your window, like, Final Destination, then the instructor would yell like, think fast, but then my son was like, no, I think it's just like an online course. But, so I was like, oh, so disappointing. I thought it was going to be like fun. But I've since found out there are some that are in person. So see, there you go. There are some where you can like actually have a person come and take you out on the road. I doubt that they yell think fast though, because that's probably really scary and not helpful at all. But, defensive driving, like the whole idea is you're predicting hazards, right? You're like thinking ahead to like, you want to be paying attention to the weather. So driving into a tornado, clearly not what you want to do, but sometimes there's no choice because you have booked the U-Haul and you have to leave one place. There's no like wiggle room and you have to end up in another place. But like hopefully enough to like you're going to pull over to the side of the road if you have to, or if you're driving a long way and you're feeling like you're not, you pull over to rest, or to be paying attention to like the signs if there's like a falling rock zone, or if another driver is doing something, to have techniques so that you are still safe regardless of what people are doing around you, that kind of thing. And I was just thinking about like the world that we're in right now, just the way things are in this country right now, but also just the world at large. Everything feels so just really to me and to so many people I know and love, it feels like there's kind of like a tear in the space-time continuum, or like, not even a glitch in the matrix, like just a giant, like we've like out of sync, like we're in some weird timeline. And I was saying that I opened Instagram last week and there was like Sarah Bareilles, the singer, right? And I just happened to like open it and she's there. She's like, she's live. She's like doing this video. She's like, I have this pillar in my house. I've owned this house for like 20 years. And there's this door, this little like hatch door in the pillar. And it's been painted shut, and I've been trying to open it for like 20 years. And there's this little, every once in a while, like, dust will fall out of this door, and, whatever. Today, finally, I managed to get it. I pried it open, and there's something in here. She's like, there's something in here. And so she's like, I've got a bag, and she had a hat, like a hat on. She put a Petco paper bag at the foot of this pillar, and she's got the door open and a shovel. Okay. I'm like, what is happening right now? And she sticks the shovel into the hole. And I mean, she's pulling out like like dirt and like ash. And I mean, just stuff is just like falling into the bag, but the bag is paper. So it's kind of like spilling like onto the floor. I'm thinking, like you need like a bucket or something. You need something like with hard edges. Anyway, she's just continuing to do this, and I'm like thinking to myself, yeah, like, oh my God, like what, this is crazy. Like there was so much stuff coming out of there. And I yelled at my phone, like, at least get gloves. And literally, like, as soon as I said it, she was like, I should at least get gloves. I was like, oh my God, I felt like she could hear, right? So she walks away, she comes back, she got gloves. The next thing that happens is she sticks the shovel in, and y'all, she pulls, this thing comes out. It looks like a charred ancient chicken carcass, okay? It is so big and it's in one piece, and she literally like pulls it out. And I mean, there were a lot of people watching. I could have sworn I heard people on my own block screaming. Like, it was just like, what am I looking at right now? So she, it goes into the Petco bag, and she just continues. And there were like more of them, smaller. So it's like a family of something, maybe birds, maybe cats. Like, it was impossible to say, but there was just like a family of ancient something had died in this pillar, and she's pulling the carcasses out with a shovel. And at a certain point, she looks at the camera and she's like, I watch Alone. And if you don't know about that show, that's like a whole other story for a different day. But she's like, I watch Alone, and you have to be tough. And I'm like nodding, like, you know what? You have to be tough today, like these days. I mean, so it turned into a whole thing because there were so many people that happened to catch this. But I really felt like this is a thing that feels like it could only happen right now. Like, things are so weird in the world, and it just feels like this could only happen in this moment. It just feels so crazy and bizarre. And then not too much time after that, I see Melania with like doing a presser, and she's walking down the like whatever corridor of what is now like the East Room, because of course the East Wing has been demolished by her husband, with a robot like humanoid. They've named Play-Doh, okay? And she's like, oh, this is a great idea, everyone. Like, you can just homeschool with this new AI humanoid named Play-Doh. So everybody can just like get one of these humanoid robots to homeschool. And, the AI company can program your AI Play-Doh homeschooling humanoid teacher to teach your kid the classic literature, of course, like the stuff that isn't banned, and, like a curriculum that isn't going to be upsetting, history that won't upset like white children, of course, and just really unwoke curriculum. I think we can all, assume. And I was just like, what am I watching right now? What am I watching? Like, is this real? Is this SNL? I had to check and make sure. Well, I was like, this has to be an AI video. This cannot be real. It was real. I literally thought, this cannot be real. This is so crazy. It has to be fake. No, it was real. And so instead of like funding, like paying teachers more, funding like education and the arts, and I barely know what to say. their idea is like, no, let's make billionaires even more money. Let's privatize everything. And just have kids learn from a robot, because who cares about a soul? Who cares about a human being teaching our children things? Who cares about life experience? Who cares about that innate, like particular, quality in a teacher and their passion and the way that they can present material that like lights a kid up? I think about the teachers in my life who saved me. Who cares about that? Who cares about learning how to work things out with other human beings? Nah, just stay home with your humanoid robot and like let your kid learn, and you can go churn butter in the kitchen while your husband does the voting. It was just like, and then I was also thinking to myself, like, it's so funny that they named it Play-Doh, right? Because I am sure that they thought they were doing something there, because, Plato was very, the real Plato, the philosopher Plato, was very distrustful of democracy, as are they, by the way. I mean, I really hope everyone is getting it now. I really hope so. I hope people, whether they voted for this guy or not, I really hope the shoe is starting to drop now, that these people they're billionaires, okay? That's who they are. They're just billionaires dressed up with a red hat as Republicans. They could care less. This is not this whole thing where they've got, conservatives and liberals screaming at each other. That's the most brilliant thing they've done. Truly. That they've got liberals and conservatives convinced these are the enemy. No. It's the billionaires, okay? While everybody's busy screaming at each other, and they're taking over all the media, they're just robbing the country blind. They're just taking everything and making more and more, just billions upon billions of dollars. It is a matter of public record now. Like, the president and his family, they have made billions off cryptocurrency. And there's an investigation. Like, it's happening. It's a matter of public record. I linked it in the essay. You can go and look. It's, I'm not pulling this out of my hat. This is just what is happening. They have made billions of dollars. He has not divested from his businesses. He pardons people if they pay him and invest in his ventures and his business ventures. His children are making billions. Like, that's what we have going on here. People were like, oh, Elon Musk, he's willing to pay the TSA workers. Isn't that great? No, it's not great. It's not great. That's how you get screwed twice. Our tax dollars are supposed to pay for that. We're already paying for that. If you privatize that, then Musk comes back in, like a minute and says, now you have to pay me too. You all, these people that voted for this and think these people are philanthropic and you're not paying attention. They're making billions of dollars all the time. That's what they're doing. And by the way, they had a bipartisan bill, just in case anyone is confused, to fund the government. The only thing, and this is what Democrats were doing the whole time, and this is not me, there are millionaires on the Democrat side too. We need to get rid of all that, okay? It doesn't matter what side of the aisle people are on. If you're talking about somebody who's like a multi-millionaire or a billionaire, they should not be a public servant, because they're just not able. It's a conflict of interest. So across the board, don't care what aisle you're on. If you're like a multimillionaire or a billionaire, you really should not be a public servant, because you're looking at the market, you're looking at the global market, you're using all this information that you have, and you're not thinking about the American people. You're not serving the American people. It's too easy to get confused about what you're supposed to be doing. So those are not the right people to be making decisions for this country. We need to get dark money out of our government. We need to overturn Citizens United. There's a lot of things that need to happen. But first order of business, these people running the country right now, go look at how much money Jared Kushner has made off of this war in Iran. Billions. Him and Affinity Partners, MBS. Go look at how much money they have made off the war in Iran. They're using our military as another asset, like it's a personal asset, like the DOJ. So really and truly, like I hope people are starting to get it. I really do. This is not it. We have serious problems in this country that we need to solve. We need to solve them together. We need a whole new crew of people. We need a whole new crew of people solving real problems, and enough with all of the, all of this just garbage. It's just enough, with the hatred and the screaming and the like, whatever. This is not it. This is not it. So, I mean, but really, it's kind of amazing that the people that voted for this guy, they scream about Nancy Pelosi and her husband Paul and how much money they have. And I agree with you. Please hear me. I agree with you. It's like, yeah, I have no doubt, like it's a conflict of interest. That's what I'm saying to you. But how do you get upset about that, but you're okay with this president making billions of dollars off cryptocurrency? Why is that okay with you? It shouldn't be. Why is it okay with you that Jared Kushner is making billions of dollars off this war? It shouldn't be. Like, those things should not be okay with you. It's hypocritical. Like, if you're going to be upset about one thing, you should be upset. Like, it shouldn't matter what side of the aisle. If you're upset about like pedophilia and children being horribly harmed, then you should be upset about the Epstein files and the fact that they are not being released. You should be upset about that. It shouldn't matter to you that this man was best friends with the president. It should not matter to you. You should be asking yourself, why did he get Ghislaine Maxwell this sweetheart deal and put her in this camp with no bars, this prison camp where she gets to go to Pilates? Why did he do that? Like, this whole thing is just, we need to get together. We don't have to agree on everything, okay? We really don't. We don't have to agree on everything. But got to agree that, like, everyone deserves dignity and equity. We have to be able to make some decisions together and agree on some basic stuff. And we also need to agree that, like, millionaires and billionaires should not be running the show, because they're robbing the country blind. There's no honor amongst thieves, and there's no loyalty. They don't, these people think about the global market. They don't care. They don't care about, like, us. They don't care. We're NPCs in their video game. They do not care. I really hope people are starting to get it. Anyway, that's it. That's kind of it. I think that one of the things that I feel more and more is just this desire to, really try to, like, get through on just a basic loving level here, and really try to speak to people. I think that most people, everyone's got their pet things that they want and that they feel, and that's fine. We can all have our things, right? Like, whatever your thing might be, or whatever, everybody's got their passion projects or their things that are so meaningful to them or, so upsetting to them. And I have my things. We all have our things, but ultimately, like, that's not what a country is about, right? A country is about making sure everyone's okay. Everyone is safe. Everyone's okay. Everyone has what they need. Everyone has, like, health insurance. Like, everyone has a safe place to sleep. Everyone has food to eat. Everyone is, being treated with dignity. Same rules apply to everybody. Everybody has to pay their taxes and make sure that, like, there's clean air to breathe and good water to drink, and we're going to take care of the environment. You got to get back on track here. It's got to not pretend that global warming is not real. It's real. We need to get serious here and be the adults in the room again and take care of all the children. All the children. It's not just my kids. I want to keep my kids safe. It's all the kids. They're all our responsibility. All the children. We just need to really have like a regroup here. And, I'm hopeful that people can start to pull themselves out of this, tribal thinking and get back into community thinking. I really hope so. Anyway, I'm sending you a lot of love. I was thinking that I would like to start offering, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. You know where to find me if you want me. You know where to find me. I'm easy to find, and I'm sending you a lot of love. Till next time.